They thought you'd beg for another chance. That's why they walked away the way they did. That's why they became so cold. That's why they acted like losing them was supposed to be the worst thing that had ever happened to you. Because in their mind, you needed them more than they needed you. They thought that you would call. They thought that you would text. They thought that you would write the long paragraph. They thought that you would show up at their door. They thought you would apologize for things that weren't even your fault. They thought that you'd do whatever it took just to get another chance. Because somewhere along the way, they started believing that they were the prize. And that's a dangerous place for a person to live. See, pride has a way of convincing people that they're irreplaceable. It whispers, they'll never leave. They'll always come back. They can't do better. They need you. And when someone starts believing that, they stop treating you like someone they could lose. They start treating you like someone they already own. And that's when respect begins to disappear. That's when appreciation turns into expectation. That's when love starts looking more like possession. And if you've ever experienced that, then you know how painful it is. Because you're sitting there trying to save a relationship while the other person is assuming that you'll never leave it. They're not fighting for the relationship anymore. They're fighting to keep the position they think that they have in your life. And eventually, you get tired. Not tired of loving, tired of carrying, tired of proving, tired of convincing someone to value what was standing in front of them the whole time. You realize something. Love shouldn't require auditions. You shouldn't have to keep earning a position you've already been given. That's not partnership. That's not love. That's performance. And people can only perform for so long before they become exhausted. See, one of the biggest mistakes people make is confusing someone's patience with weakness. They think because you stayed, you couldn't leave. They think because you forgave, you had no standards. They think because you loved deeply, you lacked self-respect. But no. You simply believed in giving people opportunities to grow. But opportunities have expiration dates. Eventually, the lesson repeats itself enough times that wisdom steps in. And wisdom says, this isn't changing. That's when something shifts inside of you. You stop asking, how do I make this work? And you start asking, why am I working this hard for someone who isn't? That's a powerful question because it changes your focus. It takes your attention off of fixing them and puts it back on protecting yourself. Now you're no longer chasing, you're observing, you're paying attention, you're watching actions instead of listening to promises. And that's exactly what they never expected. Because people who think you'll beg usually aren't paying attention to your growth. They're paying attention to your history. They're assuming that you'll respond the same way that you've always have. They don't realize that you've been changing, quietly, growing, learning, healing, building boundaries they can't see yet. And then one day, they make the same move they've always made, expecting the same outcome. But only this time, you don't chase. You don't beg. You don't negotiate your worth. You don't plead for another opportunity to be chosen. Because you finally realize something. The relationship was never supposed to cost you your dignity in the first place. There's a proverb that says, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. And whether you understand that spiritually, psychologically, philosophically, or simply through your own life experiences, the principle remains the same. Pride blinds people. It convinces them that they'll never lose what they've stopped appreciating until one day they do. And that's why I always say I help people reinterpret their past so that they can reclaim their future. Because maybe they thought that you'd beg, not because you were weak, but because that's what you've done before. And maybe this time the story changed. Maybe this time you chose yourself. Maybe this time you realized your value didn't decrease just because someone else failed to recognize it. Maybe this time you discovered that walking away with your self-respect is worth way more than staying with someone who only values you when they're afraid of losing you. That's one of the reasons I wrote Phoenix from Stability to Power as well. Because power isn't getting someone to come back. Power is reaching the point where whether they come back or not, you still know exactly who you are. You see, they thought that you'd beg for another chance. They expected another apology, another explanation, another opportunity, another version of you willing to settle. But what they never expected was the version of you who finally understood that your worth isn't something another person gets to approve. No, they never expected you to walk away with peace instead of panic. They never expected your silence to say, I finally learned my lesson. The real victory wasn't proving that you could live without them. The real victory was becoming someone who no longer needed another person's permission to believe in your own value. Because once you know your worth, you stop begging for discounts. Peace, blessings, love, and power.